Oh no. Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Clem Garritty. I'm the co-founder and executive creative director at Swamp. And if you haven't heard of Swamp, we are a brand experience agency staffed by theatre makers and fueled by our love of storytelling and creating shows. Today, I'm going to sort of just shamelessly plug Swamp and what we do, but I'm going to talk about 3 areas of our work that I think relate kind of perfectly to this year's theme at MadFest, Fortune Favours the Bold. I'm going to talk a little bit about our origin story and how we came to be, then talk through some of our brand experiences before telling you a little bit about how we put our money where our mouth is with our Swamp originals. I was supposed to be doing this with my co-founder, Ollie. There we are in happier times, but sadly, he hasn't died or anything. He's not been fired. He actually hand-delivered his wife's baby last week. Delivered it, helped deliver it because an ambulance was late. But ever the professional, he did say that we could share this photo of the following moments, which I really love and thought I'd share with all of you because I really like the sort of existential dread that has captured. Anyway, on to my own existential dread, public speaking. I thought we'd talk first about our sort of theatrical origins. So for 10 years, Ollie and I were working in theatre, creating our own shows, writing, producing, directing things all over the UK and touring the world. And we ended up both working at Punchdrunk freelance. It was a bit of a dream gig for us. They're sort of, if anyone knows, everyone knows, they're sort of the immersive godfathers that we'd aspired to be for a long time, so it was an amazing place to work. But while we were there, we started to notice that more and more people were agencies were trying to mimic a lot of the stuff we were doing in the immersive theatre space for their brand activations. And the more of those that we went to, the more we thought they weren't doing it very well. Fueled probably by being very poor, not being able to pay our rent, we decided to set up Swamp, originally called Swamp Motel. And when we started, we didn't have any case studies. We hadn't done any client work before. So to show that we were experts in storytelling and creating immersive worlds, this was our original website, which was just a GIF. And given that we had no case studies, we invited people to come to this, and all they would do would be to click on a door, and it would lead them to one of our email addresses. Or the business cards that we had for the first year or two were sort of motel key cards that we'd give out at networking events. Just a little bit racy. But thankfully, it started to get traction, and soon enough, we were being invited to pitch and into rooms with clients, which was really exciting. And once we were in the rooms with these clients, we were kind of able to convince them all that we knew that working with people from a theatre background that were more creatively minded would only go on to make better experiences for them. Rather than going to, an agency might go to a furniture hire company for their experiences, or instead of hiring BAs, we would hire out-of-work actors. We'd go to props houses. Instead of putting a big lighting rig in, we'd go and work with technicians to make functional lamps and stuff throughout the space that people could interact with and would be much more exciting. Now that we've convinced the clients that we were working with that we could deliver more exciting experiences than our competitors, we actually had to do that, and we couldn't just create things that were similar to the other people that we were up against, who were and continue to be giants in the agency space. We really wanted to stand out, so in the first couple of years, we took quite a few clients on a journey with us, and hoped that they would allow us to do something a little bit more bold so that we'd stand out from the crowd. So I'm going to talk through some of those case studies. Just have a sip of Stella. We did a few experiences with Verizon, and our first was to launch Riot Studio, which was a recently acquired branded content studio. And our job was to ensure that all wider members of the team and partners fully understood how the studio ran, how it worked, and why it was vital to the company, as well as obviously delivering the best B2B experience that anyone had ever been to. So how do you do that? Well, we decided first to show the audiences what they were expecting. They came to a very bland, dry boardroom. There was, lukewarm Prosecco on the side. We convinced the head of Riot Studio to give a sort of opening address speech. And then halfway through that, we set the fire alarm off, which no one was expecting. Everyone then was sort of ushered outside. And by the time they were out there, quite disappointed and dejected at what they'd been subjected to, that's when we revealed the real show that began. So secret doors opened, smoke billowed out, a performer appeared, and they were ushered inside to this big, amazing tour that showcased the inner workings of the studio. Imagine like Willy Wonka behind-the-scenes tour before that became synonymous with bad brand experiences. And the client really had to go with us on this to invest in the idea that that rug pull moment would be so satisfying that it would work and it would showcase the brand's creativity before we even got onto the key brand messaging. It was risky, obviously, and the client would inevitably be nervous about not telling any of the attendees what they were coming to. But keeping stum and not telling everyone meant that the shock and the joy that came from the actual reveal made them remember that experience so much more. And the FOMO that everyone who didn't come had meant that they went to all subsequent events. Another brand that sort of came with us on a bit of a journey, apologies, this GIF might drive you a little bit mad. It's just going to go around in the background. But was Capcom. So to launch Resident Evil 2, we were originally hired just to dress a themed bar on the launch night for press and influencers. And, there was talk of zombie barmen and blood-based cocktails. But we convinced the client that when you're actually in a bar, as a lot of the people over there I think are doing right now, you kind of just want to crack open a beer and talk with your friends. You don't really want to engage with story or deal with zombies. So we instead encouraged them to let us utilize the budget in a different way. And we made a 4-floor experience in this abandoned warehouse where to get to the bar was actually the thrilling thing that we should spend the cash on, basically. So audiences arrived, they ran through this amazing space, interacting with actors, hiding from zombies, finding keys in amazingly designed pieces of set. And then by the time they got there, they got to have a cocktail from an IV bag and eat gourmet food from a tin of discarded food, as though they had been sort of all hunkering down in this attic for weeks. And what was great was the game players loved feeling active, right? They suddenly felt like they were in a version of the video game that they so loved. And the 750 tickets that we had on sale for this experience sold out in under 15 minutes. So safe to say the client was very happy. Final example of some of our brand experience work. So to launch season 3 of The Boys for Amazon Prime. As a show of hands, has anyone seen The Boys on Prime? A few. Okay, so for those who don't know, it's like a superhero TV show where all of the superheroes are actually like arseholes, and this company called Vought manage them and their publicity. And so for this launch, we invited people for their first day working at Vought headquarters. And when they got there, they were shown around the building by a performer. and discovered that it was completely in disarray because one of the soups had kind of broken free and started killing people. But we wanted to do something that made this much more exciting. This was 2022, so by now, audiences are becoming much more immersive literate, as we know. Lots of people will have gone to a Punchdrunk or a Secret Cinema or a Swamp brand experience. So we wanted to do something exciting, and we convinced the client to let us leave the audience members on their own after the first act. So this performer ushered them all into a control room where they could see CCTV of the whole building, including a live feed of themselves. And she suddenly had to take a call, so she nipped outside, closed the door. They could see her on the CCTV. And then, as you might have seen in that show reel at the start, she explodes. Obviously. Which was just a neat bit of sleight of hand. You know, they've been watching a live feed that we then cut in with a bit of pre-record. But it sort of was made perfect by them opening the door and seeing the corridor now covered in blood and guts and viscera. Not everything we do is this bloody and gory, but yeah, then they had to make their way through the second and third acts of the experience all by themselves as the main characters now. And obviously, the client wants to know that each audience member is going to know exactly what they're doing, is going to do everything right, and isn't going to miss anything. But we say, if you convince the clients to let you genuinely surprise your audience, we think they're going to get much, much more from it. So yes, it might take them a few more minutes to realize that if you pick up her dismembered hand off the floor and push it against a palm reader panel to get through to the next rooms, it might take a bit longer if they're discovering that themselves than if an actor is just telling them to do it. But the joy that they felt when they realized that themselves was all the greater. So let your audiences find their way a little bit, we would say. Make them the main characters. And we had 2,000 attendees to this event with 2.2 million views on Twitch. We did a whole day where we gave it over. We sort of re-rigged the space and had Twitch influencers, content creators come through. And those streams broke Prime Video's records for streaming at the time and garnered over 19 million impressions overall, as well as, and we're very proud of this, winning Creative Event of the Year at last year's Campaign Experience Awards. And the point that I really want to land here is that with brand experiences, it's results like this that we see across the board when we convince brands to take that leap and go with a bit of a wildcard option for their experience. Whether that's creating a series of bug-eating games in the Mexican jungle for Knorr, which achieved over 7 billion views on TikTok, communicating Pinterest's inner workings with a big theatrical spectacular, bringing Beavertown's brand to life at festivals where brand names and logos aren't allowed. How do you do that? Or launching the John Wick TV series during the actors' strike with an overnight stay in a 1970s hotel. We say, go bold and see the results. That obviously shouldn't look like that, but it should say Swamp Originals. And it's all well and good telling brands to be brave, right? And saying, be bold, do something new, do something unexpected. But we've come to realize that the best way to convince clients to do that is to put our money where our mouth is. So we say we're experts, we should show them the quality of our product before they buy. In our third year as a company, 2020, the pandemic hit, and I know we're all acutely aware of how terrifying a time that was for our industry. Suddenly, you know, clients were pausing any productions, we had no incoming briefs, audiences were locked at home and terrified, of course. But rather than sit and wait for a client to come to us, we decided to do what we do best, which is create something. So we created an immersive experience which took place over this newfangled thing called Zoom at the time. And we thought if we can show our clients that we can still be creative through this weird, quite flat medium where we're all disconnected, if we can still tell stories that way and engage people, then we really were the creative agency to work with. So we created Plymouth Point, which was the first of what became a trilogy of online escape rooms that we called Isklander. And essentially, you joined a neighborhood watch Zoom with this amazing performer who told you that her neighbor, Ivy Isklander, had gone missing and she was slightly nervous about where she was. Then the camera froze, she dropped off, we made our audience the lead characters, and suddenly they had to try and find Ivy all on their own. We never told them to, but by dropping her out of there, they suddenly had to be really active. And we launched this on the 4th week of the first lockdown, so 4 weeks after the initial announcement, which we're pretty sure made us the first online escape room. And suddenly, as hoped, we had a flurry of new inbound briefs, some from pre-existing clients we'd worked with, some who'd played the games and then come to us, like Twitter. Amazon was actually first came to us through this. Basically, people saying, we want that. How do we do an experience online now that we're all locked inside? So the theory worked. We made a wild card, and it generated more work. And then in 2021, that weird period where we could socialize, but sort of only in groups of 6, we created The Drop, which was an immersive escape room set entirely in a lift. So you would go in as your group of 6. You thought you were doing an escape room, and you might be sensing a theme here, rug pull. It turned out you were in a much bigger immersive theatre show that seemed like it was built entirely just for you and your group. Soon you were running through the streets of London and breaking into hotel rooms, and it was a thriller, basically, told in real life. Next, we made an AI experience, well, an AI-powered experience called St. Jude, where you would sit at one of these cubicles and you would talk to essentially a chatbot, but you would engage with this narrative about sleeping coma patients, and we told them that this AI was translating the brainwaves of coma patients and turning it into speech. ChatGPT did launch 2 weeks after we closed this, which is slightly annoying because it would be fun to do it with that. And then we created a short film called The Altar. We thought, how do you make a film interactive or immersive? And we wanted to create a short where basically at any point when watching, you could hit the space bar or click your mouse, and it would toggle between the day after and the night before, which was a very fun new thing that, again, we don't think anyone had ever done. And yeah, allowed us to experiment with a whole new form of storytelling that, again, led to a client saying, how did you do that? Like, can we mimic something like that? Essentially, we took our profits from the original online escape rooms and started reinvesting them into our own IP experiences, which we want to continue to do. The final one was Velvet Pines, which was a big alternative Christmas spectacular last year, which was a sort of an attempt at being an anti-Winter Wonderland that maybe we're all a little bit sick of, which was kind of a Wes Anderson-inspired ski lodge dining experience, cabaret show, complete with dancing yetis, obviously. And hopefully from this sort of sample of some of our original IPs, you can see that championing that at Swamp is very special to us. We always want to do our own stuff. We know there are a couple of amazing companies out there working with pre-existing IP, pre-existing story worlds, but as long as we're around, we want to keep making our own independent shows. And one of the benefits of this is that we completely own each of these IPs now, and we can sell them. We can continue to develop them. We're really excited to be developing both Islander and The Altar into a TV show and a feature length. Watch this space. What we also think is great about creating work on our own is that our team are able to experiment without maybe the pressurized environment of working on a client or brand project. We can let their imaginations run wild in an environment that's maybe a bit more exploratory. And investing your profits into doing your passion projects is obviously risky. We are aware of that. But we're a very passionate team. So why wouldn't we want to fund that creativity and that passion? It gives us freedom to innovate, a freedom which we think no other agencies have. And finally, I think most people in this industry have dealt with that moment where it's that tussle with a client where they've come to you and said, we want to be really brave, we want to be really bold, We want to break the internet. I think most people have heard that. And then understandably, as the process continues, that bravery and that boldness maybe slightly wavers and backtracks. We want to create work, both with our independent shows and our brand experiences, that prove to future clients what benefits can come from really being brave and doing something really new. From being the wildcard brands that stepped out of the ordinary and did something a bit more special. And where brands are willing to do that, we've seen brilliant results. That's the space where we've broken records, that's where we've won awards, and that's where we've smashed all of their targets. So it's obviously worth it. In short, be brave, be bold, be the wild card. Thank you.